Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Everyone's saying the quiet part out loud tonight. Sunny Hostin didn't just have a tense moment on daytime TV. She detonated on live air, and Greg Gutfeld handed her a reality check so sharp you could hear the studio AC try to cut to commercial. That's the headline people are passing around. And yes, the core of it is true. She unraveled, he pressed, and the contradictions she's been stacking like Jenga pieces finally wobbled where everyone could see them.
Once the camera's cut.
Make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
This matters more than a meme cycle because The View isn't just chatter. It's a megaphone that shapes how millions interpret politics and culture. When the megaphone starts echoing against its own walls, you have to ask what's real, what's performance, and who's grading the script. I've watched the footage, the reactions, the did she really say that clips twice, and we're going to thread it all together without flinching. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes we're going to revisit the
years.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart. And I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well. And it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But, man, you can get toiletries. You can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry?
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to
Instacart confession that made the audience clap and wince at the same time. The ancestry reveal that collided head-on with a brand built on moral certainty, and the panel's scramble to turn a straightforward accountability moment into a meditation on feelings. And when we circle back to what slipped out, once the cameras cooled, spoiler alert, it wasn't a hot mic zinger. It was something quieter, more permanent, and impossible to unsee. Click confirmed. The moment everyone's sharing is
with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news.
Sunny declaring she hasn't set foot in a supermarket in roughly 3 years, discovering delivery and making sure we knew she tips big because the company doesn't always pay well. The line landed like a lead balloon wrapped in silk. On paper, it's a harmless convenience. On air, it read like a monologue from the balcony seats of privilege, complete with an "I tip generously" footnote to soften the edges. The public sentiment formed quickly. Why tell us you tip unless you know how it sounds? And that's the first friction.
Fueled worldview.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Point. Expectations versus reality. Expectation. The voice of the people understands the people. Reality. The people just heard a celebrity anchor announce she has outsourced the most ordinary errand in America since 2021 and wanted a standing ovation for remembering to add 20%. Put a pin in that tone. It returns later wearing different clothes. Here's where the second best point sits. The delivery confession wasn't the crime. It was the tell. Context first. She sets herself up as an everyday explainer of how regular folks feel, then casually reveals her daily life has been.
Joy Behar gets racism after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical
Been Ubered, Instacarted, and post-mated into a frictionless bubble. Application now. When your brand is empathy and your lifestyle is insulation, every policy opinion you offer arrives with an invisible asterisk. Framing. This is the expectations versus reality gap we keep coming back to. The audience expects the person lecturing them about grocery prices to know the smell of the produce aisle. The reality is she's only seen it filtered through an app interface since before the last World Cup. Cue the cognitive dissonance soundtrack. Now the strongest point, the one that took the oxygen out of the studio. Sunny sat with PBS's Finding Your Roots
into the pool, gets booed for violence.
But unlike this chick, we didn't think it was the best thing that could have happened to us. Although it did get Joy Behar to wear a mask. You make me sick. It's funny, her being named Joy is like me being named ugly.
Learned she descends from Spanish ancestors who owned slaves, and tried to process it live as someone who also advocates reparations and regularly indicts privilege from the host chair. No one is responsible for their ancestors, but everyone is responsible for their arguments. Context. The episode didn't smear her. It surprised her. She acknowledged it, even noted a strange overlap with her husband's roots, and called it a fact of life. Application. This is where her audience needed clarity more than comfort. What does her principled stance look like when the principle circles back home? If the metric is history and its debts, does she still hold the same marker, and how will she talk about it tomorrow? Framing. Expectations versus reality again. The expectation was ironclad certainty about who owes what in America's ledger. The reality is that history refuses to draw straight lines around our modern identities. When that happens, only two things work on camera: transparent evolution or transparent evasion. The crowd can tell which is which without a cheer-in. Enter Gutfeld with the receipts energy of a stand-up set performed by a bookkeeper. He wasn't elegant, he was exact. He juxtaposed her sermonettes on civility with her habit of branding political opponents as democracy-level threats. He reminded viewers how moral outrage at one administration's border policies evaporated into its complicated footnotes under another. He didn't discover these tapes, he just lined them up like fingerprints on glass. That's the power of context. When you're the one calling for consistency, you have to be the most consistent person on the stage. When you aren't, the room tilts toward the person saying, "Roll the clip." And the room did tilt. You could feel it in the careful smiles, the panel's protective huddle, the immediate reframing from one person's contradictions to a broader attack on women and minorities, as if the criticism itself had violated some unwritten community guideline. That move earns sympathy points, but costs credibility. Here's the pattern interrupt. If your position is truly principled, it should survive a replay of your own words. When words collide, either the principle grows or the brand shrinks. There isn't a third thing that let's pull back to the audience, because the internet tells the truth about tone even when it's wrong about facts. Within minutes, memes bloomed. Captions like strong opinions, weak spine. Edits of her blinking through the ancestry reveal. Stitched duets reciting the grocery line over canned applause. It wasn't polite, but it was diagnostic. Viewers weren't angry at delivery apps or shocked by genealogy. They were allergic to the performance of certainty in a week where certainty suddenly depended on which camera was on. Expectation, moral consistency, reality, moral choreography. Before you think this is only about her, the show itself deserves a close-up. The View is built like a chorus. Overlapping voices, preloaded topics, a rhythm that rewards confident declarations and punishes nuance. That's the format. It's also the trap. When a panel is trained to clap for certainty, the first person to reintroduce ambiguity, or worse, ironies, is treated like a heckler. That's why a Gutfeld segment hits even if you don't like him. He isn't smarter than everyone else, he's freer. He's allowed to be the auditor in a room full of motivational speakers. The second he points at the ledger, the speeches feel like merged. Let's reopen a loop from the first minute. The line about married white women protecting the patriarchy. Whatever you think of that take, note the mechanism. It generalizes motive, not behavior. It preassigns intent. It tells you why millions of strangers vote, think, and care. That rhetorical shortcut works in the applause economy.